Yes, we're live. Hello, everyone. Hello, all my friends. And Sean, he made it last minute. Yay! Wow. Oh, this is, of course, backstage we were kind of joking, and Sean had little issues at home, so he was saying like, "Hey, I'm gonna be a little bit late." And now, at this right second, he's just boom, he's here. So that's great. It's good seeing you all here again. How's everyone doing? Brandon, you're in Oslo at the minute, I think.
Yeah, it's cold. It's dark. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm here for NDC Oslo. I give a talk on GraphQL and C# tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
Awesome. Is it like 3 days? Because it started Monday, right?
Yeah, they do 2 days of workshops, Monday, Tuesday, then 3 days of conference talks, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Awesome. Yeah, it's one of the few in-person ones that's trying to, starting to um, um, get things going again. So that's really cool. Pedro, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Just waiting for the weekend to, rest and drink
almost
and
there.
do a lot of fun.
Almost there. And there it's warm and light, unlike Oslo. So that's great. Sean, with you, it's always gray and rainy because you're in the UK, so that's how it is there. How are you doing?
Yep, all good here. We had a slight bedtime issue. Things you can't make up. A few minutes just before bedtime, then some carol singers came around and woke everyone up in the house. But yeah, no, we're all good.
Good, awesome. And for the people who have been with us for a little bit longer, we have a new, I was going to say guest, but he's not a guest because he is now a member of the core team. We have Vladislav, and we can call him Vlad because we're friends. Vlad, how are you doing?
Yeah,
so
hello,
good for
everyone.
you to join us. Hey.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad to join the team. So we'll do my best to improve the product, make it even better.
Awesome.
It's all we do as community.
Exactly. And you have already been helping out because that is in fact the reason why we kind of asked you, because we had last month, Andre was going away. He said like, hey, I've got a ton of other stuff to do, which is fine. That happens. Life happens, just as you can see with Sean. It happens to all of us. So, that's great. But, that left us with a little bit of a gap because we have a ton of stuff to do. You'll see that in the coming hour. So, Vlad was already helping us. So we were like, hey, why not formalize things a little bit? Which means that, we have some expectations of the people that are in the core team so that there is a little bit of dedicated time because, people in the community, we appreciate all your hard work. But again, life happens. So if you are caught up in work, or it's December, so you're going to have tons of present shopping to do and all kinds of other social engagements, which is really nice. So we can't expect to, get all the time out of you. But with these core members, we have a couple of people that are invested that will help things move along and all kind of other great things. So it's so great to see you here, Vlad. Welcome to the team. Pedro has had enough. He's like, goodbye, I'm not part of this team anymore. So also what we did in the past month, like almost every month, it's cutting it close sometimes, is we did new releases of the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So we are now on version 131. I've been busy one day just releasing all the bits. So 131, Vlad has been busy with making the Maui Compat version of that same version as well. So Brandon is bringing it up on screen right now. That's amazing. So this is for 131. We got a couple of things here. Mainly bug fixes because we are kind of like hitting the brake with new features for the Xamarin Community Toolkit, because everything we're doing now in the Xamarin Community Toolkit is also something that we have to then port to the Maui Community Toolkit. And we're lazy developers, so we just like to do our work once. But here's what's changed. Something with pop-ups, UWP, something with an NRE, so a non-recoverable error for the people who don't know what that means. The snack bar, I think Vlad's going to talk a little bit about that as well. Typos in XML docs, always good as well. So just a couple of things. People were waiting for it. We made this release, and boom, here it is. Also, do you also have the release notes for the Maui Community Toolkit handy? Do we actually do release notes for that one? I'm not really sure.
Looks like whoever created this didn't put in the
Oh
release
man!
notes.
Oh, shame.
You got 6 thumbs up on it though, so
Something must be going right. So yeah, this is the .NET MAUI compat version. So just to reiterate, because all the names and all the things floating around right now is kind of confusing. I work on this and I get confused all the time. So this is the version that is compatible with .NET MAUI, but has everything the Xamarin Community Toolkit has. But it will still use the renderer architecture. So while you get everything, it still kind of like is suboptimal because it uses the old Forms architecture layer that is inside of .NET MAUI. But the upside is that you will get all the features that you have in Xamarin Community Toolkit today. Then what we're also building is the MAUI Community Toolkit, which is the .NET MAUI native version, which will not have all the features. But we are going to follow the path of .NET MAUI and re-architecture the whole thing. We're going to pick everything up, look at the thing, and see if it's stable enough, it's still something that we need, or if we need to replace it somewhere else. So that is kind of like the native toolkit that we're going to. So now you don't have to miss any functionality, and you have all kinds of choices on how you want to convert your app from one point to another and what the timeline is to do that. So that's kind of like all the toolkits that we're juggling with right now. So yeah, we got new releases with that, especially this .NET MAUI compat one. Please install it. As with any pre-release, we see that the installation rate is not that high, which makes sense. But please, if you're watching this, install it and let us know what things are not working, because then right now we can fix things well before .NET MAUI is out. We can make sure that this MAUI compat version is also a very stable version that you can use safely. We need that feedback. And if you find something and you're bored in December because you don't have a lot of friends or family and you're just behind the computer, just fix a couple of bugs for us. That would be awesome. No, I'm kidding. Go out, do awesome stuff.
And huge shout out to Vlad. This was all Vlad's work, getting out this latest release of the MAUI compat version. He redid all of the MAUI compat scripts. So thank you so much. He joined the team and made just a huge contribution in just a couple weeks.
Yeah, awesome. So, if you have maybe ambitions to also be in the picture, join our team, that's a good way to start, right? I mean, it's not going to be a guarantee, but it's just nice to work together and what everyone can do, and who knows what might happen. Actually, that is kind of the story how I ended up at Microsoft, but we'll leave that for another time. So, Sean, I think you can announce something about the next version, the Xamarin Community Toolkit 1.3.2. And I'm just looking at the notes here. I have no clue. And the V2 releases, I have no clue what it says right here. Did we lose Sean? Are we gonna have to switch to someone else? I'm behind the .NET Foundation.
We can circle back.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think we need to go to someone else. All right, that's fine. Pedro, are you there? Yes, you're here. Can you talk a little bit about the Xamarin source generators first? We have a little PR for that. So what's the plan? Maybe do you want to share your screen as well, or do you just want to talk?
Okay, let me try to share my screen real quickly. So while I open the PR here, let me talk about it. So we have an issue that happens on Visual Studio because the way that we are doing, thank you. The way that we are doing our custom namespace for XAML. And we have a fake error, like that XAML error. And probably the issue is because of the way that we work around it to avoid the users to have to call a init method on C#. So instead of doing that way, we are trying to do with source generators. That means that we will have actual file that will be injected on your project, and that will call an init method. So for the users, that will not change the way that they use our library, but the goal here is to get rid of that annoying fake error there. That I believe that don't shows up when you build on terminal. So it's just a Visual Studio thing.
Yeah, and it was basically what the linker will remove XAML because it doesn't know you're using it. And that's what the source generator will cover for us. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
Yeah.
you want to keep your XAML code in there.
We know you hate XAML, Brandon. Well, no, let's put it the other way. You love C# code. No, so that's kind of the thing, right? If you use just XAML, which is perfectly possible, because if you have a simple control that you can configure with XAML, or you just have a converter that you only use in XAML, then kind of like the way all of the C# compiling and stuff works is going to see like, hey, there's no reference to this code. So I'm just going to, so that's part of the optimization, right? It's called the tree shaking thing. So if you shake the tree, then everything that you're not using or is not really stuck in there is going to fall out. So that's kind of the same thing here. It's going to see if you're using certain types or references or whatever. If not, it's going to remove it. And because XAML is kind of like interpreted, I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing, right? It's not a hard reference in code. So it's going to see like, hey, there's no reference to this, so I'm going to remove it. So that's why for a lot of Xamarin projects, you will see that there is a init line. So you had to add that little init line to the app startup, which most of the time I'm just gonna blow you away right now. It did nothing. It did nothing. It didn't initialize anything. The only thing it kind of did is keep that reference so that it wouldn't be linked out or whatever. We have a couple of those terms for it, and that you could still use it whenever you were just using XAML. Now we have source generators, which is a really cool solution, and we can generate that little thing for you. So you don't have to worry about it. We don't have to have that dummy init line. We'll just put it then in for you, and we're all good, basically. So that's kind of what we're looking into. I think we're also looking into this for the Maui Community Toolkit, where this might or might not be relevant. So that's also what we're looking at as well. So really awesome work. Thank you for that, Pedro.
Yeah, Pedro, do you know?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just curious about timelines. Is this something we can sneak into the next release, or maybe the one afterwards?
Yeah, not sure yet. I still need to finish some stuffs there that I didn't have time, but I will try to move things next week, and maybe we can have that in. And if you are watching, please try out this PR. I believe that LCI will generate a NuGet package. Then you can reference on your project and see if that errors goes away. And if that happens, let us know, because there is no way to create a test, automate test to specify if the solution is really, really working. So yeah, we need the community help here.
Yep, absolutely. The one question I had is this dependent on, this is only available from like a certain C#? This is a language feature, I guess, or where does this live exactly?
As far as I know, we just need to build the source generator using the .NET Standard 2.0, but we can, and then we can reference any project. I tested locally, and I could use .NET Standard 1.0 or 1.6, and that still works.
Okay.
So
I didn't know it was kind of like that far backwards compatible. Like I said, I'm not really familiar with all this stuff. I just know it's really cool, and you can use it for a lot of things. But that's awesome. So because I was kind of worried, like, are we now creating another problem where people have to upgrade their things or whatever? But that doesn't seem the case. So that's awesome. All right, Sean, if we have you for some time, please, hopefully now. I'm kidding.
Yep, all my visitors are.
All right, great. You were going to talk a little bit about the upcoming Xamarin Community Toolkit version. Other things, you have a couple of highlights for us, so let's have it.
Yes. So actually, I think on the last stand-up, we mentioned not being able to access nulls within our converter classes that we shipped. So, and thanks to a community member, Countryen, he's done a fair bit of work to be able to allow that. So that's going to be coming within the 1.3.2 release. And then with the belief, as we're going through this, we stumbled across possibly being able to, a lot of the converters that we build within the toolkit don't actually use this base class. And it seemed to make sense to be able to make that happen. Mostly came out about, I think, when the author tried to write some unit tests and found that it wasn't that necessarily that easy to do. And then we realized, well, actually, there were a lot of the converters that were already tested could have used this. So did some of the changes there. And then in order to enable some more of our converters to use this base class, we'd have to make a breaking change. We originally thought we would do it part of this PR, but then as the conversation went on, you can see it's quite a lengthy one. We then worked out that we did enough to get this functional, and we can ship this in 1.3.2. And then the aim would be that we would make the breaking change going forward into 2.0. And
sorry,
I guess
scroll down. That's a lot of conversations. It's been a lot of work.
Yeah, it's been a nice bit of a few iterations there to get to this state, though. So it's been good. A few voices in there as well, which has been helpful. And I guess on the topic of the 2.0 release, I guess that's going to be our last major change, last major release, last set of features to go in. And I believe those are the only the features going into that would be ones that are pre-approved. So ones that are approved from the past and just haven't made it into a release yet.
Yeah.
Obviously, most of our effort going into the Maui toolkit eventually.
Yeah, so we've got this is me struggling to keep up
Sorry.
sharing my screen here. No worries. Yeah, it looks like we've got the source generators from Pajo. If we can get it into 1.3.2, great. If not, we'll get it into 2.0. And then we have another PR here for some more accessibility options. And there's even been already a couple PRs that are already merged, mostly bug fixes that will actually sneak into 1.3.2 when that comes out as well. So,
okay, yeah, we might want to double check. I think there was mention the other day of is it the corner radius effect that someone had mentioned wanting to use, and I think that's on develop, but not in main. So that might be one.
Oh, yep.
To go into
add that to the milestone.
Yeah.
Good catch. All right. Done.
Cool. Boom. We're just working here while live streaming. It's amazing. Okay, thank you so much for that. Yeah, so we are underway for a little while now, but we're still, trying to find ways to organize ourselves. For the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, we have this big project board with like the champion workflow, which is really amazing. We talked about that a couple of episodes earlier, so definitely go check that out. And for this, we have these milestones set up. So we're trying to make clear like when you can expect what. But as always, if you want to know anything about anything, just find us on Twitter or Discord or all the things. Basically, you'll know where to find us probably, and we're always happy to help. One other thing that we have a PR for is in the corner of accessibility with my good friend Rachel, who put out a PR for that. She's really busy doing all those things for Xamarin Forms and also for .NET MAUI, and she's really championing to stay in that specific word, championing the accessibility part of all the things, and also because same as with the toolkit kind of right now, but the toolkit has a little bit more wiggle room than actually Xamarin Forms. Xamarin Forms is not really accepting any new stuff. So I think this definitely will end up in .NET MAUI as a first-class citizen, so it will be supported there. But to also accommodate, because accessibility is an important thing, we are adding this to the toolkit so you can use it already today. And I think some of the accessibility parts will go into the toolkit first and live there for a while, and then we sort out how we're going to implement it in .NET MAUI. So you can use it basically anywhere you want. And I think this specific thing, what this does is kind of like set the semantic focus. So this allows you to set the semantic focus based on actions that the user takes. Because, if you have like full vision, full sight, 100% everything, you have this fancy design, and the designers will make sure that you will look at the right places at the right time, basically. But whenever you maybe have trouble seeing things, or you're completely blind, that you're going to have to trust a screen reader. And then suddenly all the order of how things are on the screen don't really matter. But what matters is when something is read out loud, right? So whenever you add something to your cart, you might want to know how many things there are in your cart. And I think with this effect, I'm not really up to date with what Rachel's doing, but from what I understand from this, you can really trigger like when something is read out loud and how kind of like the screen reader skips through your app to make kind of like a different flow from like the visual flow, right? So I think that is what this does, and I think it ready to implement. I think it already was also approved by Pedro or something. So I think this is close to merging. So that will probably end up in a version as well. Again, I realize that we are also saying like we're not adding new stuff, but this is like one of those things where it's important enough, nice enough to still take in. So we're gonna do it, but please don't see this as a queue that you can still add all kinds of stuff. It's kind of a funny situation that we're in, and we're trying to manage the best that we can as well. What else do we got? I see here in my notes, Pedro, lead a vote on drop effects proposal. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So while September 30, I wrote a proposal that we don't use the effects API anymore on the MAUI Community Toolkit. And that is because, originally the effects API was a way to customize controls and behaviors on when you need a platform-specific code. And since Xamarin Forms was not built with multi-target, you need a bridge between the shared code and the platform-specific code. And to do that, we have the effects APIs. But with the .NET MAUI and the multi-target support, we don't need to use that API to get access to the native code. And I referenced some links there through issues and discussions on PRs inside the .NET MAUI, where the maintainers mentioned that the effects API will not have too much attention. We have effect support on the .NET MAUI to not break too much people, but that API probably will not receive too much attention for the future. So my proposal here is grab our effects that we have and change it to behaviors or just attach it to properties or maybe a mapper or something like that to use. And that probably will lead in some performance gain because we needed to call less methods to execute that code. So, and probably will be easier to maintain as well. So yeah, that is the overview of the proposal.
Yeah, I kind of think. Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I don't put my 2 cents in before we vote. I agree with this. Speaking with the .NET MAUI team, effects will still be supported in .NET MAUI, but it won't be necessarily recommended. It's more of a backwards compatible thing. And so with all of these great effects that we have in the Xamarin Community Toolkit, we'd still like to bring those features to the .NET MAUI Toolkit, but we don't necessarily need to do them via effects anymore. And like Pedro pointed out, we could probably implement them as behaviors. So the features will still be there, slightly differently implemented, probably a slightly different name. So instead of icon tint color effect, it'll be icon tint color behavior. But that's my 2 cents. If you want to know which way I'll be voting in just a second, I agree that we should also move forward without effects in the .NET MAUI toolkit, since that's also the recommended approach from the .NET MAUI team.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I was going as well, right? Because the .NET MAUI team itself is already saying like, hey, the effects, meh. So there's a good chance, not that we really decided yet, that as far as I know, by the way, maybe I'm not included in those conversations, is that for the next, because the first goal of .NET MAUI is going to be compatible with everything that Xamarin Forms has, right? So we can't just drop effects or we can't just drop whatever. We need to have that all in there. But if the .NET MAUI team is now saying like, hey, maybe we are not really recommended effects anymore, then there's a good chance that they will drop it for .NET 7. And then suddenly we have to do think about how we're going to solve it then, right? So we'd better just think about it now. And kind of like the whole story about effects and behaviors is that it kind of was, well, you could achieve the same thing with both of these things, just in a slightly different way. And one was optimized for the one thing and one for the other. So, I think this totally makes sense.
All right. Before we vote, does anybody else want to chime in with their 2 cents, or shall we do a show of hands? All right. Well, let's vote. Let's see. Who raise your hand if you want to approve this and move forward without effects, but also keeping those same features just implemented differently in the .NET MAUI toolkit. Got. Oh wow!
Okay,
Unanimous.
well.
All right.
That was easy.
Boom, merge it. Oh no, it's not.
Do we have any kind of idea as to what effort we're going to have to go to? Because obviously we're saying that we're going to map each thing to something more applicable within.
How many
MAUI.
effects are there? Do we know that?
Let me check here.
It's not that many, I think. I think the converters is like by far the most, but that doesn't require any changes, so that's awesome.
Yeah, if you go to the project board, when Pedro brought this up, I bumped all the effects back down to this submitted column here. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 effects. So,
and I think typically the code in the effects is not too much, so it seems pretty doable, I would say, just from
right on. Well,
volunteering to do it then.
Well, yeah, I'll say Pedro.
What did you say, Sean? You'll have it done tomorrow? All right.
I said you were volunteering to do it.
Yeah, I'd say, Pedro, whenever you get a chance, check out those effects that are here in that proposal submitted column. And if nothing else, at least we could change the title to behavior, or if there's a different way to implement it, maybe behavior might not be the best for all of them. Tweak those, and then we can keep them in there, and we'll cycle back through those, and we can reapprove them as essentially new features now.
Makes sense.
Cool. All right, so I'm looking at my notes. Brandon, you have another thing that we need to vote on, which is a text color 2 proposal. To be honest, I don't even know what it's all about. So,
yep. So hang on, let me bring myself up here. There I am. All right. So this is basically an extension method. Our friend, the pie-eating ninja, Peter, I saw you in the comments. So cool, so cool you're joining us for the live stream. And also, thank you for doing this. But yeah, Peter implemented a color extension for the background color. We've actually merged that in already. So again, thank you, Peter, for that. And that one's called background color 2. So the same way you can animate your views with, say, rotate to, or translate to, or fade to, Peter added background color 2. So you can kind of animate the background color. It's a really cool effect. And he was looking at it and said, hey, wait a minute. We can do another one for colors. So he found out that iTextStyle, the interface in .NET MAUI iTextStyle, is where we implement a text color. And so it's actually pretty straightforward. The animation, let's see if I can, there we go. Basically, it's an extension method on an iTextStyle element. So think about, your labels, your text buttons, anything with text on it will inherit or implement iTextStyle. And then when you call this extension method, it'll animate the text color. So what he's taking advantage of here is the animation library. We call commit on it, pass in some information. He even has a good little try catch here, because sometimes if the view hasn't been rendered yet, then it'll throw this argument exception. So we'll let you know that it didn't actually animate. We'll return false. But wanted to bring this to a vote, see what everybody thinks about it. should be pretty straightforward. I'm the one championing it. So again, you probably know which way I'm voting. But also, Peter has volunteered to implement it as well. So as long as we like, and let me bring the API design back up here. Whoop. So as long as we agree this is a cool feature to have, and we like the API design, Peter's already volunteered to do the work, including the samples and the unit tests as well. So what does everybody think? We can do a quick discussion before we necessarily have to vote on it.
Right now, like this will be extension method and will be easy accessible for C#, but do we need that for XAML as well, support?
That's a good question. So I'm the wrong person to ask about XAML, but how do you do animations in XAML? Like, because when I animate my C# UIs, yeah, I'll call like the rotate to method if I want to spin a label or something like that. Is that a thing in XAML?
Yeah, we have that. Oh, go ahead, Sean.
Oh, so we've got the animation behavior, haven't we, from the toolkit that lets you define the animation within the XAML, and then you can invoke it from, say, the view model if you wanted to. I guess that's probably the closest you're going to get to triggering animations. Well, defining animations in XAML.
I think the whole animation stuff lives mostly in code right now. I think at some point we had a proposal for kind of like storyboard animations in XAML, something that is somewhere in the back of my head. But I think, sorry?
So that's to match the old WPF days.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe that will come. I think a lot of people were happy to see that, but who knows? So I think the animation stuff mostly lives in code right now as well. That might be good to investigate, but I'm not really sure if that should block kind of implementing this right now.
Yeah, it's more like just a curiosity.
Sure. Yeah.
Question.
Very good.
Yeah, I agree with you that doesn't make sense to block this just because it doesn't have XAML.
Sounds good. Vlad, any thoughts before we vote?
Actually, I like the all features. So I'm voting for all features to champions.
Okay, well, let's do it. Show of hands if we approve text color 2. Wow, unanimous. One of these days we're going to have one that we actually fight over. But
yeah, probably. No, what I really like about the animation
page.
stuff is that, like, the animations are kind of small things, maybe not too complicated. And I think it will benefit a lot of people who are trying to achieve the same thing, but are probably like me and don't really have an idea how to do all that stuff. So if we can make that easier to make other people's apps look awesome with the least amount of effort, I think we should definitely add that. While we're on this topic, I'm seeing one kind of interesting thing that we then maybe can fight about, is that someone is saying, hey, awaitable functions, the names must end with async. What are our thoughts on that?
That one's definitely my fault. Amir, you can blame me. So here's my take on, what would that be? Appending, because we're adding it to the end, async to method names. My take on it is, if there is a both non-synchronous and asynchronous, so a sync and an async version of the same method, then yes, absolutely, one should be appended with async, specifically the one that is async and returns a task. But that was definitely more of a thing back when async await first came out in C#5, where we were essentially updating all of our code and we had to specify which ones are async. Nowadays, with the tools we have with IntelliSense, you can see that it returns a task. You'll get a warning in the IDE if you don't await it. I don't really see the need to always append async unless there is a matching synchronous method.
Yep.
That's my take.
To be honest. Yeah, that was along the things that I was going to say.
Certainly not a rule. That's just Brandon's rule.
Yeah, and if anything, right, it's the thing that you agree upon as a project or as a thing, right? That's kind of like it kind of falls in the category of questions that I get, like, what is the right way to do X or Y or Z, or how to architecture my app? There's no one right way to do it, as long as you're, like, consistent and your whole team agrees upon this thing. But this is the Brandon way, so we have to do this.
and I will say, just put another point in my bucket. Amir commented text color to async. In .NET MAUI, all of the animations are something to. So it's rotate to, fade to, translate to. So we also want to try and keep our code and our naming conventions as similar as possible, and our architectures as similar as possible to the .NET MAUI code. Mostly because one day we hope to promote this code into .NET MAUI. And so that's another reason why we want to, or we chose to just call it text color too.
Yeah. All right. I think it's time to move on, because I see that we're already 40 minutes in and we have a lot to cover. So I don't think we're going to cover it all today, but let's see how far we can get. I have to highlight something which is called the MAUI namespace discussion, which is great, because we have now also, actually, we talked about this already in the Xamarin Community Toolkit. We have this handy URL where you can say this the XML namespace. You can see it here on screen, where you can say XML NS toolkit is, and then this little URL, and that allows you to import all the namespaces in the toolkit at once, instead of having to list the behaviors and the controls and all the things separately, right? Because then you will get this kind of XAML. It's already kind of verbose, so whatever we can do to make that better. This is a proposal by Dan. He also proposed it for the Xamarin Community Toolkit. And while this is great, it also introduced the kind of bug that we've seen when you're only using XAML, and suddenly you will get these errors about things not being found. And now we're going to solve that with the source generator. So in this discussion, we're starting the same thing, like, hey, do we also want to have this for the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit? And I said yes, if we can find a way to not run into the same bug that we have now with the Xamarin Community Toolkit and confuse users with the errors and whatnot. So some of that will go away automatically, because now we will have to add the handlers to .NET MAUI anyway. So we're going to have our init call, but it actually does something this time. So you're going to hook it up in your generic host builder. You're going to have that call anyway. So there will be a link to kind of like the encode anyway, so it will not get stripped out. But you can still not do that and only use things in XAML, because you don't need handlers whenever you're just going to use a converter that you can only use in XAML. And then we're going to land on like the same space where we have that bug popping up again. So in that regard, we then probably still also, if that use that source generator solution is going to work for the Xamarin Community Toolkit, that's probably also a very feasible option for the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit. But that's kind of like the discussion that we're going through. I asked Dan if he could maybe put in a formal proposal for this, but I think I saw on Twitter that he has this kind of beard right now, which is going all kinds of ways, and he's diving and enjoying doing a whole bunch of nothing. So he's on vacation. That's great. So we'll probably get back to this next month. But in the meantime, this discussion, I hope that, yes, Brandon was pasting it in the chat. Please go to that discussion. And if you have something to add there, if you have any thoughts, please put them there. Anything that we might have overlooked, I mean, that happens. We're only people as well. Put it in there, and we can take that into the proposal.
Yeah, and also, this doesn't have to be Dan that does it. Dan brought it up. He's kind of leading the discussion, but like we said, Dan's on taking a well-deserved holiday break. So if anybody in the community has the time, we'd love to see this created as a proposal. We can then vote on it in our next stand-up and approve it, because even somebody like me who doesn't really use XAML much, I think this is a great idea. So I'd love to see this one implemented as well.
All right. While we are a little bit short on time, I just want to highlight this little question right here, which is for Pedro. I'm not sure if Pedro is keeping an eye on the chat. Steve, my good friend Steve, because he's also a fan of my YouTube channel, he wanted to ask, like, how is the conversion of the pop-ups going along?
So conversion is kind of funny. Shane and I did live stream 3 hours, more or less 3 hours, to convert that to the Android platform. I pasted the link to the private chat, so if anyone can post on the public chat. So Shane and I was working there, and we already done the Android implementation. So the Android part is working with handlers, and we figured out some bugs on Maui side during this conversion. So today, actually, Shane just opened a PR to fixing some issue that we found during this conversion. Now I am working on the iOS port, and the last part will be the UWP/WinUI port, because we don't have UWP anymore on Maui, so we need to convert some APIs to use WinUI APIs. But I will try my best to finish that this year yet, and because we probably will need to follow, since this is the first handler that we are moving that needs to use the native code, the handler approach. We will have some definitions to do, like how will be the architecture and stuff like that. But it's doing well so far, and you can follow the progress. There is a branch on Maui Community Toolkit, I believe is pj/popup, something like that, and you can follow my progress there. If that answers your question. If not, you can feel free to ask more.
All right. Cool. Yeah, so I just want to, because I see next thing on the schedule would be a little bit more about Pedro, but I'm going to skip that. Sorry, Pedro. So let's go to Vlad, and because he has a little thing to talk about for the toasts and the snack bars and all that kind of thing. So just so we can give Vlad a little bit of time here as well to talk about what he's working on. Go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Gerald. So my proposal is about toast. It's actually the small kind of message which you actually see in the bottom of the screen, which like a small notification for you. Here is a proposal similar to the snack bar, which was recently implemented for .NET MAUI. And the toast is pretty much almost the same, with some maybe limitations. Because of the toast, it doesn't have action button and some other visual options which snack bar has. So here we
Could you
have...
zoom in a bit, zoom in a bit there, Vlad?
Oh yeah, sure. Is it enough?
That looks good to me. Well, we'll stay tuned to the comments. Oh, that's really good. Okay, let's do that.
Great. Yeah. So here we have a like duration, even is shown that just a small text, small visualization options for the like background color, text color, font size. And if you're familiar with the native Android toast, you will see like a static method just to make it and show. As for implementation, we are going to use native toast for Android and for Windows as well. And as for iOS and macOS, it will be like small pop-up. As for the how it's actually going to different between snack bar toast and pop-up, in Xamarin Community Toolkit, we haven't toast at all. We use snack bar for all cases. Maybe it was a mistake because we had some issues on GitHub where we described that users expect toast, but they see like snack bar without action button. So here in Maui Community Toolkit, it's going to change. We're going to use like native implementation. As for pop-up, why it's maybe not applicable to share the code, just because pop-up uses it's a dialogue. If we see an example which I prepared, for example, for snack bar, if we see it, you see that all buttons are active. If we switch to the pop-up, and let's click, for example, here, show pop-up, you can see that this button is not working because it's actually dialogue and you're not able to click on it. So maybe that is why we split it in Community Toolkit MAUI, and that is why it will be two different codes, two different implementations. As for pop-up, we already implemented this for iOS and macOS. It's just a UI view with a container where you can put any content inside of it with predefined anchor container which can be used for all platforms. As for Toast, I think it's pretty much the same, where we have just we use the same pop-up view with just a message. And as for snack bar in here, it's used the same, just with the action button inside of it. So that's my proposal for the Toast. What do you think about it?
Yeah, this one is interesting to me because I and you answered it all, so thank you, Vlad. Because my first thought was like, well, we just did snack bar. Well, actually, you did snack bar. Thank you, Vlad. And so we have snack bar, and then Pedro's working on pop up, and we're talking about toast, and there's another discussion about like a bottom sheet, and what are the differences, but yeah, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, a snack bar is a toast, but with a button on it, and a toast doesn't have to have a button. Did I get that right?
Yeah, actually, yes, maybe they looks a bit different if we're talking about like native implementation, because in snack bar it takes the whole, for example, here it takes the whole line from right to left. In Toast, actually, because it's a Xamarin Community Toolkit, it looks the same, but Toast just a part of it, so in the middle of the screen. But mostly, yeah, it's this. If we were talking about it, it's mostly the same, just without button. Actually, there are some differences described in a documentation where they describe it in more details, where something should be used for foreground, like snack bar mostly you should use it in a foreground messages, but Toast can be used from the background process, where you just display that something happened in the application. And maybe it's a major difference between these two controls widgets.
Interesting. So, yeah, we dropped the link in the chat to come join Vlad about the discussion on the toast. So if you have any comments, concerns, or if maybe you want to add something to the iToast interface, let us know, because eventually this can and likely will become a proposal that we'll be voting on soon. So
yeah. And just as one mentioned that in Windows, we implemented it a bit different. As for snack bar and Toast, it mostly looked like native Toast, like a notification from Windows, but in Nugget package which we use, it's named Toast. So it looks different from what we had in Xamarin Community Toolkit, where it's just a place in the bottom of the screen. So it's maybe different for different users. So also let us know in GitHub if it's working solution for you, or you expect maybe different behavior. For now, I think we're always open for discussion.
Yeah. Cool. I really like the Windows one actually. For that's how it fits on the Windows platform. So that's really cool. I think one of the other things is what Brendan kind of already highlighted is for I always forget which is which, but one of them has a button, and I think it's kind of like because Android is the only kind of platform that has this natively, and I think it's restricted to one button there, right? And I know people have asked for like more buttons, and that's kind of like where it's hard to implement. Are we going to implement our own thing also on Android, or are we going to stick on other platforms to the Android restriction? Because else you will have this weird situation where you will have I'm just going to say snack bar with on Android only one button because that's restricted there, but on iOS you can have two, and then people will come to us with issues like, hey, why do I only get one button on Android? So that's kind of the issues of dealing with cross-platform development. That is what we are dealing with.
Yeah,
all right, Vlad.
that's also where
go
pop-up
ahead.
comes in.
Just
Yeah.
to know that in Android, you can also use a native XAML for Android and implement your own visual style for snack bar and override it where you can have multiple buttons. But it's up to you. I think, will not be implemented in Toolkit, at least for now.
Cool. Brandon, you were going to say something real quick?
Oh yeah. So my take on if you want multiple buttons, I think that's where pop-up becomes leveraged, and because you can basically get similar functionality, and pop-up is kind of you can put whatever you want into it. Where snack bar is usually just a text and a button, or a toast is just text. And so
yeah, and because of interface, you can implement it whatever you want. You can implement your own snack bar, your own implementation. It's up to you. You can just inherit from it and use.
All right.
And
One last. Oh, yeah.
I would just ask if you like the snack bar. Basically, the snack bar, you need to core the snack bar to a control, right? Because like the pop-up is more like a modal page over a page, so you can like have a Keystone UI or with entries to a login, for example. But the snack bar, you always need to anchor like the bounds of the screen or a control. Is that right or not?
Yeah, snack bar and toast mostly like alert, while the pop-up is more like a dialogue
Makes
of view.
sense.
So it depends. It definitely will not be in the same namespace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
yeah, that's a good point too, Vlad. In the Xamarin Community Toolkit, all of this snack bars, pop-ups are all in the views namespace, whereas we decided to go with, since toasts and snack bars are more alerts than views, like for example, you're not going to add a toast into your stack layout. So we created the community toolkit.maui.alerts namespace, and that's where Vlad has toast in the discussion. So yeah, join in the discussion. Let us know what you think. I know I'd love to see how much we can share between toast, snack bar, and pop-up. But that's mostly just selfish, so we don't have to maintain as much code.
Yeah, that's what we like. So we only have a couple of minutes left. I wanted to highlight one more thing actually, really quick. So Pedro, can you really quick point us at least in the right direction for the discussion of? I think you have some plans on reorganizing the repository a little bit.
Oh, yes. So this also came from Shane and my interaction on that stream that he mentioned that would be great for the community toolkit if we follow the .NET MAUI repository architecture that is creating more CS projects to separate the layers of responsibilities. So for example, right now we should need the core project and the controls projects. And we want to make sure that the core project does not reference the controls, but the controls reference the core. And when we talk about CS project, that is easy to do because we cannot have a SQL reference between CS projects. But if you keep them in folders, we can, at some point, do the mistake to put some reference here and there and mess up the things. Also, another good point, but this is more for the future. It's like another frameworks like Fabulous, that is, you build mobile applications with F Sharp and Comet. They use structure generators to generate controls. So if we build our controls on top of interfaces and have that core project separated, that will help them to generate the implementation for those controls using source generators. So, in other words, the community kit will be used more in more scenarios and not just the .NET MAUI, let's say, MVVM side, because the commit will be the MVVM side of the .NET MAUI. So, yeah, that is the idea. And I believe that will be very straightforward because we do not have too much code there yet.
Awesome. Yeah, I posted the link to the discussion in the chat as well. So please chime in there. Let us know what your thoughts are on this. From what I hear right now, this makes total sense. But yeah, we're absolutely interested in, kind of like your outsider view as well, because we're working probably more with this stuff than you are. And we want it to be clear to you as well, so you can join in and contribute to this a little bit as well. This is all of our time, and we have amazing other stuff about something about a bottom sheet. Oh my gosh, Brendan. I think a lot of people want that. Add grid row columns discussion. I don't even know what that's all about. Drawing view, which is also very awesome. And Vlad has done a lot of work on that as well. So expect all those things on the agenda for the next time, I guess. Brandon is going to show something real quick.
Yeah, just again, this is our discussions tab in the repo. So come in here, sort them by the top. So make sure you select this drop down, say all, and you can see all the highest voted ones. I know this is our top voted one about doing a separate toolkit without a dependency on Maui, and maybe that's something we dovetail into what Pedro was just talking about. But yeah, come on in, upvote these so we know which ones to focus on, highlight here on our stand-ups. And this is how we want to, or how we do prioritize things. So
yeah, or create a new one if you have any new ideas, of course. Absolutely. Davey, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Brazil. You're saying hello, but we were just about to say goodbye because this is all the time that we have. So please join us for next month. Davey, thank you so much for joining us. You can rewatch it right after this. We will see you all next month. Have happy holidays and all that kind of stuff. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah, see you in a year.